The story begins not with a war, but with a quiet, deep sickness in the heart of a country. Germany lost a great war, the First World War, in 1918. The peace treaty that followed was harsh. It forced Germany to give away land, dismantle its army, and pay immense sums of money to the winning countries. This humiliation, combined with a worldwide economic collapse in 1929, crushed the German people. Millions lost their jobs. Money became worthless. People stood in long lines for a single loaf of bread. They were hungry, angry, and looking for someone to blame. Into this chaos stepped a man named Adolf Hitler and his political party, the Nazis. Hitler was a powerful and angry speaker. He stood before crowds and pointed a finger. He said Germany's problems were not the fault of the lost war or the bad economy. He said the problem was a specific group of people, the Jews. He called them a poison in the blood of the country. He lied, saying they controlled all the money and had stabbed Germany in the back during the war. He promised to make Germany strong and pure again by removing them. He also targeted other groups, Roma and Sinti people, often called gypsies, disabled people, homosexuals, and political opponents like communists. His words were simple, his enemies were clear, and to desperate people, his message offered a dangerous hope. Hitler did not have to force his way to power. In a broken democracy, his party won more and more seats in the government. In 1933, the German president, an old man named Hindenburg, appointed Hitler as chancellor, the leader of the country. Many politicians thought they could control him. They were wrong. Immediately, the Nazis began to tighten their grip. They used their own private army, the brown shirts, to beat up and intimidate anyone who spoke against them. They created a secret police force, the Gestapo, to spy on people and arrest them in the middle of the night. Fear began to seep into everyday life. For German Jews, life changed fast. A few months after Hitler took power, the Nazis organized a nationwide boycott of Jewish shops, businesses, and doctors. Brown shirts stood outside stores, painting the word Jew on windows and threatening anyone who tried to enter. This was not a random act of violence. It was a government-sanctioned campaign to isolate and impoverish Jewish citizens. Then, in 1935, the Nazis passed the Nuremberg Laws. These new rules made the hatred official. The laws stated that Jews were no longer German citizens. They were now subjects, with no political rights. It became illegal for a Jew to marry or have a relationship with a non-Jew. The goal was to separate Jews from the rest of society completely. A Jewish businessman who had fought for Germany in the last war found himself suddenly stripped of his citizenship. A Jewish child was expelled from her public school because of a new law. Neighbors began to look away. Friends became strangers. The world was closing in. The isolation turned into open violence on the night of November 9, 1938. A German diplomat was shot in Paris by a young Polish Jew. The Nazis used this act as an excuse to unleash a coordinated attack. This was not a spontaneous riot. It was a state-organized pogrom called Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. Nazi stormtroopers and civilians, following orders, shattered the windows of thousands of Jewish-owned stores, hence the name. They burned over 1,000 synagogues across Germany and Austria, desecrating holy books and sacred objects. Jewish homes were broken into and looted. Ordinary men were dragged from their apartments and beaten in the streets. Over 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps like Dachau, Buchenwald, and Sachsenhausen, not for any crime but simply for being Jewish. The world watched as smoke from burning synagogues filled the sky. For the first time, Jews were arrested, en masse, and imprisoned in camps designed for terror. The message was clear. There was no future for Jews in Germany. The aftermath of Kristallnacht was a new level of official persecution. The Jewish community was forced to pay a massive fine for the damage caused to their own property. A new law barred Jewish children from attending German schools entirely. All remaining Jewish businesses were forcibly transferred to non-Jewish owners at a fraction of their value, a process called Aryanization. Jewish doctors and lawyers lost their licenses to practice. Jewish life was being systematically dismantled, piece by piece. The goal was to squeeze Jews out of the country by making their existence impossible. Desperate families now tried to flee. They sold their belongings for whatever they could get. They stood in long lines at foreign embassies, begging for visas. But most countries, including the United States, Canada, and Britain, had strict immigration quotas and were unwilling to accept large numbers of Jewish refugees. The doors to the world were closing. A family would pack their most precious belongings, hoping for a visa that never came, watching as their savings vanished and their options disappeared. As Germany expanded its territory, first annexing Austria and then invading parts of Czechoslovakia, its anti-Jewish policies spread to these new lands. The persecution was exported. In Austria, the local population often participated in the harassment with even more enthusiasm than in Germany. Jews were forced to scrub the streets with small brushes while crowds mocked them. The Nazis began to concentrate Jewish populations in specific districts of major cities, creating crowded, impoverished ghettos. The first major step toward the physical separation and control of the Jewish population was underway. The world was moving closer to a major war. Hitler's demands grew. He wanted more land. Britain and France, hoping to avoid another war, appeased him, but his ambitions were limitless. In September 1939, his army invaded Poland. Britain and France declared war. The Second World War had begun. For the Jews trapped in Nazi-controlled Europe, the war was not a conflict between nations. It was a death sentence. The war provided the Nazis with the cover they needed to escalate their campaign from persecution to mass murder. The invasion of Poland brought millions more Jews under Nazi control, and the Nazis now had to decide what to do with them. The answer would be more horrific than anyone could have imagined.